Hello and welcome to this review of a nylon string guitar from Strong Wind. This guitar can be found on their website, which I will put in the information below, as well as some sound sample videos if you'd like to listen to the way this guitar sounds, without any commentary or anything like that, and be the judge for yourself. This guitar currently retails for $59.99, so just under $60 US. And I'll go ahead and summarize my review by saying the kind of person that I would recommend this guitar to. So, I think this guitar would be a great fit for somebody that wants a nylon string guitar to play and literally only has a $60 budget. If they can't spend any more than that, then I would actually recommend this guitar. Also, I would recommend it to, a young student who is beginning, who needs a nylon string guitar to learn either classical or flamenco, and maybe the parent is not sure, if their child is going to stick with it, and also they don't want to get the child, a really nice or more expensive instrument because they're afraid that the instrument's going to get dropped and knocked around and banged up, and in working with young students, these types of things happen more often than not. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to start out with an instrument a little bit cheaper, but that still plays well. This guitar would certainly work for that type of individual. So, when I saw the price point for this guitar of $60, I really didn't have any hopes for the guitar. I was willing to give it a shot, but I just thought, how can a guitar that's only $60 really be worth playing? That was my honest thought. But, I think the main thing about a nylon string guitar, this guitar gets right, which is it plays really easily. And later on in the review, I'll get into more details, kind of the strengths and weaknesses and sound quality and all that kind of stuff. But I've never played a guitar in this price range that was set up as well as this guitar is. And what I mean by that is that the neck is extremely straight. I mean, just as straight as it needs to be to support good action, so that the strings are in appropriate height above the fingerboard, and also the nut and the saddle, the two pieces of hardware on which the strings lay as they go across the guitar, are set up really well, really nicely, so that the strings are not too hard to press down. But also, when you do press down the strings, you're not getting any unnecessary buzz because of an improper setup. Because you've got a back bow in the neck, or you've got some really unlevel fretwork or things like that. And, this guitar is certainly not made out of the finest materials. I mean, it's not even made out of middle-of-the-road materials. It's made out of cheap materials. And, this isn't a secret. If you just look at the price point, then it speaks for itself in terms of, what was spent on the materials. Not very much. But it's put together in such a way and set up in such a way so that it plays really easily. So because of that, for somebody that couldn't afford more than $60 for a classical or flamenco guitar, or for any student that was new to the instrument, really of any age, and just was hesitant to spend very much money on their first guitar, while they're learning and just starting out, then I think this guitar is a great fit because it plays very well, very easily. So easily, I was shocked, to be frank. I couldn't believe how easily it played. The fret wire is pretty small and very flat. So that's the only thing that I would say, it's not quite as playable as a guitar made out of better materials. But besides that, it plays very nicely. And that is, I think, the most important thing that this guitar gets right. Because right out of the box, It's set up, it's ready to go. You don't have to take it to any repairman or anything like that. And also, if you're learning what a guitar feels like, what it feels like to play, and play well, then you'll be in good shape with this guitar, because you will certainly encounter difficulties in learning to play music, but you won't be encountering any unnecessary difficulties. In other words, it won't be, too hard to push down a string to fret a note. And the fact that, there are no fret buzzes on this guitar, not a one. If you properly fret a note anywhere on the instrument, you won't get a nasty buzz. That's pretty amazing. It really, really is. So, usually a guitar being factory assembled and coming off an assembly line is not really a ringing endorsement for, wanting to buy a guitar. In this case, I gotta say, because it is assembled in this way, that it makes me assume that if you were to order this guitar, the setup on it would be the same. Now, I can't guarantee that, the climate where you live won't kind of do a number on, how the wood is settling in, depending on where it comes from and what it has to go through to get to you. So I can't guarantee that it won't need any adjustment, but it does make me think that these guitars are set up well, and that the chances are good that when it comes to your door, it will be ready to go, easy to play right out of the box. So that's, I think, the best and most important thing about this guitar. So all that being said, let's get a little bit into the strengths and weaknesses, and why I would recommend maybe getting a more expensive guitar if you had the funds for it. So I already mentioned the materials. Of course, this guitar is made out of very cheap materials. The guitars that were sent to me had a few nicks and dings on them. I don't know, they may have been scratch and dent items. It's really not a huge deal, but they were enough for me to mention it. Some of them are just finished, but some of them are deep enough so that you can see the bare wood exposed. So that's something that's worth mentioning. Otherwise, I think, the guitar does look very pretty. It's finished very nicely. The rosette is very pretty, and the top and the back and the sides, I think they all look very nice. The top is made out of basswood, which, from what I hear, is a wood that is used with a lot of cheap guitars, but can still make some nice results. And that's kind of how I feel about this guitar. I think the main downside in terms of how the guitar functions is probably the tuners. The tuners do not work very well. This isn't something that's unexpected, but especially the fourth string tuner is just really hard to turn. And, I think a young student, depending on how young they were, would actually have trouble getting it to turn. If you look on the Strongwind website and you read their description, first of all, if you live in America and you read the description, I don't think it's going to make you want to buy the guitar. It's written by somebody that, English is not their first language, and the descriptions sound, how do I say it? They just don't make you want to buy the guitar. They kind of sound like advertisement only. They don't make a whole lot of sense, and unless you're just totally buying into what they're saying, it just kind of sounds like, this is a good guitar. It functions well. It does the things that you want it to do, without properly saying, what these things are, how they work, or how this guitar does them. That's one of the reasons I made this review, because I want people to know, from someone that plays guitar, every day, how does this actually function as a real instrument? But, the tuners are an issue because if you wanted to replace them, you're probably going to spend more than it costs to buy the guitar. So you're probably not going to want to replace them. So you're going to be left wrestling with these tuners. Now for me, it was just kind of a minor annoyance, I have some guitars that have very nice working tuners. I have some guitars where the tuners don't work as well, and I just kind of have to wrestle with them. So I'm kind of used to it, but I don't have any that I have to wrestle with as much as these. And like I said, the 4th string, man, that tuner is just hard to turn. So, if you had a young student, someone 8 or 10 years old, trying to turn this tuner, they would have a very hard time. There's also, quite a few, I guess I'll call them assembly defects, For instance, if you rub your hand along the side of the fingerboard, you can feel bumps along the edge of the fingerboard where it feels like the end of the fret wire sticks out a little bit, and then it's covered by, I'm not sure if it's covered by wood or like some finish built up or something, but you can feel these bumps at the edge of each fret wire. Now, some guitars, the fret wire is not properly finished or crowned at the end, so when you rub your hand along the edge of the fingerboard, it actually feels kind of sharp because you feel the edges of those jagged frets. So it could be worse, it could be that, and you don't feel that at all. Instead, you feel these little bumps. Is it going to get in your way when you play? Well, I don't think so. It's just something that's kind of weird feeling for me. I'm not used to feeling the bumps when I rub my finger or rub my hand along the side of the fingerboard. Another defect that I think is important to point out is if you look at how the saddle sits in the bridge, in the groove that it sits in, it's not a very tight fit. And what that does is it allows the saddle to rock forward as the strings go across it and pull across the saddle, going towards the headstock. So because the saddle can lean forward a little bit, it exerts some extra tension on the bridge. And what may happen over time is the bridge will just pop off and it will become unglued, and you'll open up your guitar case. Hopefully you won't be playing when it happens, because that might hurt pretty bad. But you'll open up your guitar case, or you'll come into your room where your guitar is, and the bridge will just be hanging there by the strings. It'll have popped off. I have seen that happen to factory assembled guitars. These were guitars that had been played on for many, many years. I'm not sure how long, but it's not like it happens overnight. And you can see some space between the bridge and the top of the guitar. So, I certainly wouldn't say it's glued improperly. Could it have been secured better? Certainly, because, you can see some space in there where the woods are not making contact. So there's no glue in those spaces holding them together, binding them together. So this is something that may happen over time. Now, it may take years, 5-10 years, probably at least. So if you pay $60 and you get 5 or 10 years out of this guitar, and then the bridge pops off, well, I still think you got your money's worth. You've gotten a lot of good mileage out of the guitar. So again, not a huge problem, but just something to point out in terms of, kind of defects about the guitar. A few other features to mention about the guitar. It does have fan bracing. It has a 5-fan bracing pattern. I haven't seen what it looks like, but I have jammed my arm in there and felt the bracing. And the middle brace stops short right about where it would meet the bridge, theoretically, which is a little strange, but it is what it is. And also, a really neat benefit of the guitar, I think, is that it does have a truss rod in it. So the truss rod is an adjustable rod that runs through the middle of the neck, and it has this socket that just barely sticks out underneath the neck that you can see when you look into the sound hole. So in case the neck gets bowed or warped and you need to straighten it out, you can adjust the truss rod to do that. Now, like I mentioned, this guitar didn't need any of that. The last guitar I was sent did need some truss rod adjustment, and I don't think that was a negative on the guitar. I think it's just humidity changes and shipping and all of that. it might kind of knock the neck out of shape. This particular strong wind guitar came in great shape in terms of the neck and how it was set up. But just in case you did have to adjust the truss rod, it's good to have. And I wouldn't say that I like having a truss rod in all guitars, because when you get to very finely made, handmade guitars, I don't think it's a good idea to put a truss rod in the neck, because I think it affects the sound in ways that I'm not a fan of. But for a cheaper guitar like this, I think it's a great idea. So I think it's really cool that they put that in there, because the sound quality is not to a point where you're going to be picky about stuff like that. And they did include an Allen wrench with the guitar so that you can adjust it, which is really neat. I mean, I happen to have like 30 of them lying around my house. But, if you don't, then you don't have to go, try and guess what size will fit. They send you an Allen wrench. The guitar also has one strap button, which I need to mention because it does not have two. It only has one. The strap button is kind of where the end block is on the side of the guitar. So if you have a strap that needs two strap buttons, you won't be able to use it. You'll have to use one of those straps that buttons on one side, and then I think they kind of wrap around the headstock or something like that. Personally, I've never used one of those before, so I don't know how practical they are. But if you need to play with a strap and you like those types of straps, you can use those with this guitar, but you won't be able to use a strap that requires two buttons unless you install it yourself, which you certainly can do. But the second button does not come with this guitar in particular. Now, I'll talk a little bit about sound production and tone quality. It's a little hard to say because, mostly in the world of nylon string guitars, they're such sensitive instruments. Mostly you get what you pay for. A $60 guitar is going to produce, kind of only so many sounds, for lack of a better way to put it. A guitar $200 or $300 will produce a few more, and if you get a guitar that's $5 or $10 grand, well, it's going to produce a whole lot more different types of sound and much better sound quality, deeper sounds, louder sounds, all that kind of stuff. That being said, as a person that does have some of these guitars that cost a lot more and sound very nice and produce a lot of different sounds, I don't feel like this strong wind guitar is holding me back in terms of sound production. On the contrary, I did tell Strong Wind that I would record a video using their guitar, and I thought it would be a great opportunity for me as a musician to use a much cheaper instrument than I usually use, and see if I can still make a good sounding recording. And so in that way, I don't feel like the guitar kept me from achieving that. At the same time, is it going to make as many different types of sounds and as loud a sounds as a guitar that costs 100 times as much? Well, certainly not. Certainly not. But if you do have some training in sound production, then I think you'll kind of know what you are getting, and I wouldn't say that you're being held back. If you're just learning, I think the technique study of making sounds and sound production, it does take some time. So if you kind of are forced to get a cheaper instrument, or you just think it's a good idea for you when you start to get a cheaper instrument, I don't think this guitar is going to hold you back in terms of sound production. I think the playability factor will probably be more important. It is versatile enough so that you can do some sound changes and hear how the guitar responds to when you play it in different areas and things like that. And then down the road, you'll certainly want to upgrade if and when you can to a guitar that is more versatile. So I can't really give it a grade in sound production. You kind of get what you pay for, but I can't say it's a negative because of what the guitar costs. I will say, I think to anybody that buys this guitar, I would definitely recommend changing out the treble strings. So if you're new to nylon strings, classical guitar strings, you have 3 treble strings and you have 3 bass strings, and they're made differently. The bass strings are wound and the treble strings are just nylon. Usually the material used to make them is nylon. And I don't know for sure what kind of strings were on this guitar. My guess is that they were D'Addario Pro Art nylon normal tension guitar strings. And what makes me think that is that the trebles in that set of strings are a little bit bigger than usual. They have this kind of cloudy, milky look to them. And also they sound like room temperature garbage. I mean, they are just awful sounding trebles, in my opinion. I really don't have a guitar where I can use the D'Addario Pro Art nylon normal tension strings. So what I did was I left the basses that were on the guitar on there. If those are D'Addarios as well, I think they're fine. I like the D'Addario basses. I think they're very, very good. The trebles, I just don't have any use for. So what I did was I took the 3 treble strings off and I swapped them out for a different brand of treble strings. So I put strings on that were brighter and a little deeper, and that just sounded nicer. And I think it made a significant impact on the guitar sounding better. A guitar like this, you're going to want to give it all the help it can get. And the strings that come on it, I just wouldn't recommend. Maybe for some people, I know some people do play on these D'Addario treble strings. But, I've heard a couple of different luthiers say, people who build guitars say that when they build their guitars, they use the D'Addario Pro Art nylon normal tension strings because they're the most bland sounding strings out there. And their thought process is, if I can get my guitar to sound good with these awful strings, then any other string that someone puts on is going to sound good. And, I think that makes a lot of sense. So I did want to mention that I think if you swap out the treble strings when you get the guitar with a different brand, it definitely helps the guitar, and it will make it sound better, and it will definitely make the trebles nicer to play on and give you a more clear sound. And of course, as you keep playing, you're probably going to want to try different brands of strings. But I really can't recommend the treble strings that come on the guitar, at least the ones that were sent to me, and I would just change them. You're free to give them a try, but right after that, I would recommend changing them out. So that's about all I have to say about this guitar. Again, I would recommend it to somebody on a very tight budget that wasn't any higher than $60, or for a young student who was beginning and needed a guitar that their parents would be okay with them revving up a little bit. I think it would be a good fit for those types of individuals because it is still very easy to play and it plays very, very nicely. Otherwise, if you have some more to spend, I would probably recommend, spending your full budget on a more expensive instrument, whether that's a few hundred more or a few thousand more or even above that. I would certainly get whatever your budget allows. So again, check the info below for links that will take you to the Strongwind website if you want to check out this guitar on their site. Also, I'll link a few recordings I've made with this guitar. One is solely for sound samples, me just playing kind of a bunch of different pieces, trying out the guitar, seeing what it sounds like. And then another is a recording of a Christmas arrangement I did with this guitar. So check those out. They'll be in the information below. Good luck with your guitar purchases, and thank you very much for listening.